Hey everybody, welcome to another video. Going back to 1984 again. So we're going to continue with things of 1984. And in this one we're going to do not just board games, but we're going to do just games in general, meaning role-playing games, board games, anything that was not a computer game pretty much. Because I was looking at the list on Wikipedia and I'm like going, oh wow, they got role-playing games in here too. So if you don't know the difference, obviously a role-playing game is a game where you take on a role. Obviously the most notable one is Dungeons and Dragons, which I've talked about many a time. And if you want to see those videos, go back and watch my videos on Dungeons and Dragons. But there were a lot of other ones, not as popular as Dungeons and Dragons. Ones that I personally like better. I love D&D. Don't get me wrong, but for me, especially in the mid to late '80s, my favorite role-playing game, hands down, and we'll talk about it because it came out this year in '84, is Marvel Superheroes role-playing game. And it coincides, obviously, right with Secret Wars and right with when I started collecting comic books, so it's kind of a no-brainer there. And it's on the list, so we'll get to that one too. But there's, a couple other role-playing games that show up on here, which I'll talk about. I didn't have them all. I didn't play them all. I would say I had probably a percentage of this list. There's a few things on here I don't even know what they are. I've never heard of them before, never seen them. There's a lot of stuff on this list that I definitely had seen going to the hobby shops, back in the day, and seeing them on the shelves and looking at them and interested in them. But you only had so much money, so you had to kind of you had to cherry pick what you wanted. And of course, if you're already buying stuff for one game, you probably wanted to stay with that game for a while. As you can see in my videos, I wouldn't say it's attention deficit disorder. Maybe it is. Maybe somebody who's more learned than I am. But, I think a lot of us, because I know plenty of friends, and we can't all have the same disorder, who liked lots of things. We didn't like just one thing. And a lot of this stuff, like I said, the Marvel Superhero role-playing game coincides with collecting comics, which also coincides with toys, which also coincides with cartoons, which, now with the cinema, the MCU, coincides with movies. So it's all interconnected. It's just companies trying to sell lots of product, and if they're making a lot of things that interest you, catch your attention, or maybe your friends, you're very susceptible to your susceptible is not the word. You're very influenced by your friends and what they do, especially at a young age. My son's going through that right now. He's turning 12 this Sunday. And he's got the things that he likes himself, which he ends up in turn influencing his friends, and then vice versa. So, when you're young like that, and that's not to say you can't do that when you're older. Obviously, if you have older friends, or you're hanging out with people and you're an adult, or you're my age, you might see people into something that they catch, kind of catches your attention, you weren't aware of, therefore they influenced you, So, but definitely when you're a kid, and again, when you're soaking all this stuff in, in an early age, and there's just so much out there, as we see, how many videos we're going to do in 1984, how many things came out in 1 year. It's insane. Really, if you think about it, it's truly insane. I'm thinking about nowadays, and you've got, a lot of stuff's come out with like modern toys, but most of it's all just rehashes of the stuff from that time period, from the 80s. Dungeons and Dragons put out a lot of stuff. Actually, they haven't put that much out lately. There's stuff going on with them. You probably, if you know anything about D&D, you know some of the controversy that's going on with that. But for 1 year, specifically 1 year, to have that many movies, that many albums, that many games, that many toys, it just keeps going. That many. To come out in 1 year is just insane. It's mind-boggling. I mean, I thought a lot came out in '83, and it did, but '84 just takes the cake, and we'll see when we get to '85. I'm not going to do a count how many things and then see if '85 beats it, but you can basically tell if it's close, or it's, there's a landslide, which one's got more stuff coming out. And again, none of this stuff, for the most part, for the things that I was personally looking at, aren't terribly expensive. I mean, action figures can be pricey, and if you buy a lot of them, obviously they add up. But they're not super pricey. Video game systems were pretty pricey, and that was probably the priciest of what I've been talking about so far. Because buying, well, in '84 we didn't start buying movies yet, like on videotape, but definitely albums, definitely going to see movies. Everything was relatively not that expensive. I mean, all of the stuff that I'm talking about, for the most part, is all cheap entertainment. And it's funny because I was talking with a buddy of mine, and I said to him, I said, it's just, I probably mentioned this before in a video, but I said, it's very mind-boggling how much pop culture, and specifically entertainment, is how much time and energy you spend on it. Some people more than others. Obviously, I'm somebody who spends a lot of time on pop culture and entertainment. So and I think it's indicative of my generation, Gen X. It's indicative of a lot of things. And again, there's just a deluge of stuff coming out in the '80s, and that's why people, still to this day, not just the Gen Xers. I mean, even boomers will tell you this. My parents and other people's parents, and people who love the '50s. They'll even say, "Yeah, the '50s are great, but man, a lot of stuff came out in the '80s. It was great." And that's like me now saying, well, it would be me for the 10s, because that would have been 30 years. Remember, we're talking about a 40-year anniversary here. But still, it'd be like me saying the same thing about... And I would say in the 2020s, yes, a lot of stuff has come out. I mean, obviously, this whole room has been filled up with stuff that's come out in the 20s. But again, it's all... I mean, this stuff is the same stuff we had 40 years ago, just a newer, better version of it. And some of it is the exact, some of it is just, direct one-to-one copies of that stuff. But as far as new properties, new things coming out, not a lot of them. There's a few things here, but again, it's because of the time we live in, and it's because of just how corporatism and how all these companies work nowadays, and nobody wants to take a chance. Nobody wants to, develop things. And I think with Amazon and online shopping and stuff, I think that the infrastructure that's there, you would think is a breeding grounds for just selling tons of product, but I think it's not, because there's a sea of shit. I think when you have a finite amount of things, even if it appears to be a lot of things, but if you have a finite amount of product, so going back, to like the Sears catalog, the JCPenney's catalog, and there's a finite amount of product that's popular that year. It's not everything that's come out, but it's a lot of the stuff people want for Christmas. It's a finite amount of things, and therefore you can digest it. You can find other things, sure, out there. But I think with the internet, I mean, it's just so much stuff, and there's just so many people trying to sell stuff, and resell stuff. It's just insane. I mean, like I said, the internet, and I'll say it once, said 1,000 times, and it pertains to many things. It's, both the curse and a blessing. I find it to be a little bit more of a curse than a blessing, although the blessings have been great. Obviously, I can't do what I do for a living without the internet, because it just didn't, that world just didn't exist back then. And I tried to do, what I'm doing now back pre-internet, and it wasn't very successful just because I didn't have the reach, and it didn't have the tools, the reach. There's lots of things. I mean, like I said, in this year, 1984, when I said to my mom, and to my dad to a certain extent, I want a computer, Obviously, I was right. So, I mean, it's not a thing. I was right, but I mean, obviously, I knew something was up, as did a lot of young kids back in that time period, and said, you know what, I need a computer because that's the wave of the future, and if I want to do anything in the modern world, sure, you might have pipe dreams. You're going to be programming spaceships and robots and stuff, with your computer. I knew I wasn't smart enough to do that, but I thought getting a computer might make me that smart. But I knew just on the base level that a computer was the way to do things back then. At 11 years old, I knew that, and I was right. So fast forward 40 years, and I'm living proof to myself back then, my 1984 self, that your assumptions were correct, sir, or young lad. um, so sorry, I went on another tangent, as I always do, but getting back to 1984 in-game specifics. So let's pull up the Wikipedia page. I'm sorry. Let's see. And I know I use Wikipedia a lot, but Wikipedia is Wikipedia. It's useful. And again, I mean, these are for the most part true. I mean, most of the stuff that I've come across, it's pretty close to being accurate. There might be a few details here and there that might be a little off, but for the most part, all the stuff is pretty correct. I mean, it's pretty easy to pinpoint. Did something come out in 1984? Yes, this is right in the box. It came out in 1984. Well, there you go. So these are games released. So as it says here, this page lists board games, card games, war games, miniature games, tabletop games. So I got to pull up little pictures here. Obviously, you know what a board game is, and you know what a card game is. And then and this is pre-collectible card games, by the way. There were card games that weren't just regular card games, like poker and that type of thing, regular playing cards. But there were card games with cards, specific games back then. But they weren't really marketed as a collectible card game. That obviously started with I don't know if it started with Magic the Gathering, but obviously Magic the Gathering is probably one of the first ones that popularized that formula. War games have been around. Obviously, war games have been around since, you can go back to Napoleon. You can go back to probably ancient Rome, ancient Greece. Anytime they would, have a war, and people wanted to do simulations or even just, I'm sure people weren't really in it for the fun back then. But I think they probably did enjoy it to some extent if they had the privilege of doing that. But obviously, running games and simulations is a standard military practice. So war games have been around forever. Miniature games obviously is an extension of war games. It's the more it's the hobby, the more creative, more crafty hobby version of it. Because most people say, and this is true to 1984, and I used to say this. I didn't say it in this regard because I was quoting a movie that hadn't come out yet. Well, sort of quoting a movie that hadn't come out yet, but I would say the same thing. I said, and I didn't even know they were called this back then. Chits, these little pieces of cardboard with information printed on them, little icons, little numbers, very very bare bones. An engineer created it, an artist did not. Because there's two different things between an engineer and an artist. My engineer friends will tell you that if you work at the auto industry, the design department and the engineering department are two separate places. They're always in conflict with each other. And my friend called the design department at Chrysler the hand wavers. Oh, here come the hand wavers again. They're coming down the hall hand waving. You did something and messed up our design by designing it or engineering it a certain way, and they would fight. You can't design it like that because it won't work physically. So again, a lot of war games, and a lot of people who play war games are and still are engineers or engineers or whatever. But yeah, the quote I was going to say is, "In my gay day, war games were all chits." I was quoting Princess Bride. Obviously, in my day, movies were all books. Yeah, did I say Wargames? Princess Bride. Yeah, Princess Bride. Sorry. Didn't Wargames come out this year too? So, anyways, there you go. Wargames. That's what they're doing in the movie Wargames. The real life simulations. Um, anyways, so yeah, Wargames chits. Miniature games, on the other hand, it's more of the hand waving. It's more artistic. It's more craftsy. You're painting, and assembling models of little of regiments and stuff like that. Now, what they're doing in that picture there, that's pretty hardcore. We used to have a hobby shop. I think it's gone, called the Old Guard, and it exactly was that. It was the Old Guard. It was a lot of boomer generation people and even older. And so, of course, it obviously got the nickname Old Guy Hobby. An Old Guy Hobby, or Old Guard Hobby, would cater to a lot to this crowd here, the hardcore wargaming crowd. So if you ever go to a gaming convention, and you'll see the guys that are super serious, and they're usually older gentlemen. It's like basically take the guys you see at the mall playing chess and crank them up to 11, speaking of movie quotes. This is for those guys, right? You'll see these guys with cases upon cases of, bins upon bins they're toting in, bringing them into the gaming convention, and they've got entire boards laid out. And they're very serious about it, and they've laid down all of their command counters, their command chits, to command each troop, and they're thinking about strategy and how, right? Those guys. That's this. That's that stuff. Which again is also this. If you go to you'll see tables of this going on. That's very similar to going to this. It's obviously these guys have just put a lot more into the visuals into it. So how does that differ from tabletop role-playing games? The percentile dice, Dungeons and Dragons. It doesn't differ too much, except for obviously with Dungeons and Dragons. And Dungeons and Dragons started out as a role-playing game, or a war game, by the way. It's called Chainmail. But Dungeons and Dragons is, you're playing the role of one character, or sometimes two, but usually one character. He's an avatar or an idealized version of yourself, or maybe he's just somebody or some, girl or guy, female character, male character, or whatever, in between character, is a personification. You're playing the role. You're like an actor playing the role of that character, and so it differs to a degree. But a lot of the same things are the same, except for you're looking at it, instead of looking at macro, meaning like a whole legion of whatever Napoleonic troops. Now you're looking at it in the micro, to one specific guy on the battlefield with a sword or a gun or whatever, and that's how that works. So let's see what else we. Like I said, and also they have a special. We're not talking about video game. We already did that video. We're not talking about video gaming here. So let's get into the games of 1984. So the first one, I'm not going to pull up visuals for all of these, but Indiana Jones was a TSR, which made Dungeons and Dragons, and they had the Indiana Jones role-playing game, came out in 1984. I wanted it, never got it, never played it. It was just one of those games, again, you'd always see at the toy store or the hobby store, and you're like, hey, one of these, I'll get around to it maybe at some point. But you want to know something? I love Raiders of the Lost Ark. I liked Indiana Jones Temple of Doom. I liked Last Crusade. I'm not so fond of the newer movies, but anyways, I'm not really that big of an Indiana Jones fan. I don't have the romanticism that a lot of people have with the whole, the whole the whole adventure serial kind of thing. There's some people that really like that, and that's fine. I'm not really that big fan of it. It's okay, When I think of Indiana Jones and that type of, adventure, I think of Perils of Gwendolyn, the Land of the Yik Yak. And that movie has other things in it, too, that are more fancy than the Indiana Jones or the Raiders of the Lost Ark-ness of it. But anyway, so like I said, I never got into this, so I'm not going to go too heavy into that. Axis and Allies. Now, Milton Bradley Obviously, no Milton Bradley, the company. And they had Milton Bradley Electronics. They had electronic games and stuff like Dark Tower, which came out in '82, by the way. But Axis and Allies, I didn't play it then, meaning I did not play it in 1984, but I did see them come out. There were 3 games that really hit the shelves. Toy stores, Kmart, everywhere. You would see them in the gaming section, and they were really pushing these games. They're big, massive boxes, and expensive for the time. More expensive than a playset. So a playset, say, is $25. These were like $35, $40 for these. These were expensive back then. Nowadays, games like this, Twilight Imperium comes to mind. These are like $125, $150 games nowadays. But Axis and Allies was exactly that. You played the Axis. This is World War II. Playing the Axis, playing the Allies. Oh, sorry, the other 2 games were Shogun, which that was the one, out of the 3 games were my eyes, because remember, we're talking about 1984, karate, ninjas, that whole 9 yards, right? So my mind went right to Shogun. And it's surprising Shogun's not in here. Shogun must not have come out in '84. Maybe Shogun came out in '85? Does it? That's interesting. So maybe Axis and Allies came out first? Or maybe they just I don't know. I'll have to look into that. That's a good question. The other game was Fortress America, which is essentially the same thing as Axis and Allies. And Shogun was the same thing, except for instead of World War II, you're fighting in feudal Japan. You got daimyos and shogun and samurais and that type of thing, and ninjas. You use a ninja to do certain things. Anyways, Axis and Allies. Fortress America was essentially like Axis and Allies, but it was World War III. It was Fortress America, meaning that America was the hub of the world. And Fortress America meant you were going to protect America at all costs from invading forces or nuclear war. It's called Fortress America. I played it a couple of times. It was the more obscure of the 3 games. I liked it. I just haven't played it enough. Now, Axis and Allies I played a lot. And again, 1984, I wanted to play this game, but didn't really play it. I didn't play any of those 3 games until high school. I wasn't old enough to understand exactly how to play the game, and I'll get to that because there's a Milton Bradley game coming up here that I did hit at this year, and I couldn't figure out the game. Anyways, it took other smarter kids that I went to school with to, again, remember, kids influence other kids into stuff, and they knew how to play the game, and they showed me how to play the game, and once I got it, because somebody showed me how to do it, I was like, oh, I love this game. And Axis and Allies to this day is an awesome... Imagine Risk, but turn it up to 11. Risk, but a lot more difficult. And just a lot more stuff going, a lot more components. And I'm all about the components. Alright, so let's just pull that up, because I got that up here in my thing here. Axis and Allies. So that's Axis and Allies right there. There's the box. Now, they do have... Axis and Allies was Milton Bradley. Incidentally, Milton Bradley was bought out by Hasbro this year in 1984, but it was still called Milton Bradley for a while. Now, Milton Bradley had the rights to Axis and Allies, and then they ended up selling the rights to Avalon Hill. Avalon Hill, of course, was purchased by Wizards of the Coast. And then I believe today it's just Wizards of the Coast, or maybe it is still Avalon Hill, I'm not sure, but they still have a version of Axis and Allies today. The box is a lot smaller. They basically condensed things, made things a little bit smaller. Back then, everything was huge. But I preferred the older... I always prefer the older versions of games, just because it was so much more impressive. And this game would always be on the shelf at Toys R Us, and I've probably owned at least 4 different copies of Axis and Allies at some point in my life. Just because I would sell it off or trade it off, and they're like, oh, I want it again. Oh, yeah, there it is right there. Axis and Allies. And then, of course, they made splinter games like the Pacific, where it's just the Pacific battles. They did the Battle of Britain, I believe, which is, I can't remember what it's called, but just the Battle of Britain. But this one was the whole total war, and you would play the Axis, which would be you're at a disadvantage. You played the Axis, although you're a little more powerful in the beginning of the game. You would play as Japan, and you would play as obviously Germany. But here's the problem: if you played Japan, if you did not get your fighters and produce enough fighters and bombers to get to America, essentially to get to Pearl Harbor by the first turn, you're done. Because the first thing the person who's playing America is going to do is they're going to send theirs, because they know it's coming. Obviously they know their history. They're going to go over and they're going to basically blockade Japan. And if you're Japan and you get blockaded, it becomes Fortress Japan. It's almost impossible to knock that player out, because it's just a battle of attrition, throwing things into Japan to destroy Japan, just like the real war. But at the same time, Japan can't go anywhere. They're blockaded. All their transports, they can't get off their island, and they're basically done for the rest of the game. So if you're Japan, you have to attack America and knock out as many ships as you can in the first turn, which can be done, but it takes all of your resource to do it. And obviously the other ones you play is Britain, and then the other ally would be Russia. And Russia's another one. Russia, you have to invade Germany right off the bat. You can't wait a turn. If you don't wait a turn and if you just sit back and just build up Russia, you're screwed, because Germany's powerful right off the beginning of the game. So you have to go in and you have to start attacking Germany, and whittling down their economy quick in the beginning of the game. So the only way the Axis win, the Allies win. The only way that Japan. The only way the Axis wins is if Japan attacks Pearl Harbor right in the beginning of the game, and and again, Germany also has to do the Battle of Britain. They have to attack and send their air power in and just bomb the shit out of England right at the first turn, just like history. Then the Axis can win the game. If they fail to do those things, they will not win. Allies, on the other hand, same thing. If you do not go and attack Japan right off the bat, and if you're Russia and you do not... Russia, and the people playing Russia, the people playing Britain, hopefully they go first. They've got to sandwich Germany quick, like in the first turn. So that's the game basically there. Again, a game with a lot of stuff going on, a lot of things to step on. It's one of those kind of games. And again, that's the newer version of it down there. Let's go back. Sorry, I did spend a little bit of time on that one because I love that game. British Rails, these are like the empire building games for Mayfair Games, put a lot of railroad games out. I didn't even know they existed back then. Maybe I did, and I saw them at like Joe's Hobby Shop, but I didn't really pay attention. They just looked boring, so I never got into them. Now here we go. This is the game I was talking about. This is also a Milton Bradley game, and this is like, if you think of, I'll pull it up. If you think of Axis and Allies, which I guess I can close that now. Where are we at here? If you think of Axis, and I'll leave it open just in case I need it, but Axis and Allies is Axis and Allies, Shogun, and Fortress America are the three big Milton Bradley board games. Broadsides and Boardy Parties is like the sleeper hit. It's like the one that is just like those games, made by the same company. A lot of, obviously, the boxes look a bit different, although it was a square instead of rectangle. But not as many people played this one. It wasn't as easily, couldn't find this as easy. I found it, my grandma, of all people, my grandma and let's go back to remember our geography. My grandma lived on Wilcox. At the time, I was living down the street. I remember going to my grandma's house every Thursday night. Well, it was the middle of the summer of 1984, so it was before I started 6th grade, out of Mrs. Warlock's class. She said, "Hey, Lana, let's go walk up to the Great Oaks Mall." Remember? So we had to go walk down the street, go up 7th Street, cross Ludlow, go through that weird little, there's like a house and like another house and like this weird little alley thing. Go through there, and then suddenly you're in Great Oaks apartment complex. Go through Great Oaks apartment complex, Great Oaks Mall, And boom, you go through the fence, you're in the parking lot, there's Jacobson's, there's Great Oaks. So we walked up there, just because we wanted something to do. My grandma said, we gotta get out and do some exercise, go out and walk up there, although I was bike riding all the time. I think she wanted to do some exercise. And I think she just wanted to go do something. So we went up there, and we figured we'd get lunch at that cafe, and look at the stores and stuff. So we went into the toy store. It was a weird one. It was kind of like a fancy toy store. I mean, they had the regular fare, but at the same time, they had a lot of Playmobil and a lot of like rich kid educational toys and a lot of games. It was a great place to get D&D stuff. It was a great place to get board games. So we went in there, and I saw this sitting. They had a whole stack of them with one on top. That's how they would advertise, just like Walmart does, but for kids. And of course, kids see that, and you're like, "What is that?" I thought it was like, is another game like Axis and Allies, and it was, but it's different. And I looked at it, and it's like, okay. Oh, it's like, and when I saw the model ships, you build the model ships, or you put the little model ships together. I was sold. I was like, oh, and it's like, what is a broadside? Oh, it's the side of the ship. See, I didn't know what that term meant then. Oh, it's the side of the ship. So you're broadsiding. So you broadside in boarding parties. Okay, so you're two pirate ships that pull up on each other, and broadside. You're showing your broadside where your cannons are, and you're gonna blast each other, and then you're gonna send your dudes across to try to take over the other ship. It's like, oh, this is awesome. It's a kind of a smaller scale. It's not, not obviously not world conquest here, not taking over feudal Japan. This is ship-on-ship combat. And I thought it was cool. I loved the cover, loved the artwork for it, loved everything. It's like, I fell in love with this. And I'm not a huge Pirates person. I never have been. But when I saw all that, I was just like, ugh. I went gaga. So it was like $40. And anyways, I said to my grandma, I said, oh, I really would like to have that. She goes, well, let's get it for you then. My grandma didn't have a lot of money. Trust me. She didn't have a lot of money back then. Fixed income, Social Security, she babysat, her husband had died. I mean, she did not have a lot of money, although she did sock a lot of money away. But anyways, I was just like, I mean, getting my dad to drop $40, and I could do it, but it took some arm twisting. My grandma's just, sure, let's get it. And of course, I had to carry this giant box back home. But anyways, I was just flabbergasted. So I got it home, and I was sitting on she had a big porch. I'd sit on the porch there, and I would open the box, and I was putting the ships together. Nice sunny summer day, and I was looking at the directions, and that's when it always happens. I look at the directions, and I go, I can't read. And I couldn't read. I couldn't figure it out. I could not understand it. I mean, I could like I said, it wasn't that I couldn't read. I mean, I could read a word, but I mean, if you heard me read daily, which I think you have in some of my videos, I don't read very well. If you heard me read when I was 11 years old, you knew something was problem. Like, there's something going on here that needs to be fixed. And it took the schools a long time to finally do something about that. And my parents didn't really pay attention. So getting to be able to read that book, that little booklet there, to figure out how to play the game, I was just like, I'm lost. And my grandma, being the southerner that she is, who graduated from the 6th grade, she wasn't much help either. So it wasn't going to happen. Now, my dad, who's very smart and obviously very, very well read, he didn't have the patience. I would hand him something like that and say, hey, Dad, can you figure out how to play this game? He'd like, can't you find a friend to figure this out for you? My dad didn't have a lot of patience to help me. He could do it, but he didn't, like I said, he didn't like a lot of the stuff that I was into, and he's just like, I mean, he'd purchase the stuff. He liked seeing me do stuff, but at the same time, he just really didn't want to help. So my sister was obviously at University of Michigan at this time, so it fell on me trying to seek out. My mom wasn't going to help either, trust me. My mom and my grandma weren't too far from each other. But anyways, I tried to ask some neighbors, and then one neighbor, kind of a hippie neighbor, he was like, yeah, bring advice sometime, we'll figure it out, right? Well, I tried, and they ghosted me too. So the hippie neighbors ghosted me. The ones with all the cool record albums. Their house always smelled like pot. Anyways, they ghosted me too. Um, and then my other friends, we tried to figure it out, and they were obviously could read better. They're younger than I am, the ones in the neighborhood, but they read better than I did. Even they were just kind of like, let's just use the ships and just play with them like toys. All right, that's what I did. It wasn't until, and I forgot about this game for the longest time. I didn't even play it in high school. I don't know whatever happened to my version. I ended up breaking the ship. I think I tried to put them in the river or the duck pond downtown at the park, and sank them, and they've gone forever. But anyways, I forgot about it until like the late 90s, early 2000s. I was going to college, and during the gaming people, my one gaming friend, my friends are also engineers, they were like, oh, I love that game. I forgot all about that game. And then my friend ended up getting a copy of it, and then we finally ended up playing the game that many years later. I have played it, but it wasn't for a long time later. So there's that game. Broadsides and Board Repairs. That's my story on that one. 36. Okay, I'm gonna try to get through this list. There's not a lot here, and like I said, I don't know a lot of them. Chill. I know about the game. It's a role-playing game. I saw it at Joe's Hobby Shop and the KB Toy Store all the time, but I was interested in it. I liked horror stuff to a certain degree, but I just couldn't really. I don't know, something about it. It's just like Conquest of the Empires. Played it in the 2000s when I was in college. Did not play it back then. I saw it, never played it. The Dark Eye, German tabletop, just by the name, I don't know, even if the picture. The Duel, which is weird, they bring up, it's an expansion to Dune. Dune was a 1979 game. That's a game all into itself, but there was the Duel, which is an expansion to that. Don't know what that is. Golden Heroes. Okay, so there was obviously the big game of 1984 was Marvel Superheroes, but a lot of other smaller role-playing game companies ended up making a lot of superhero games because obviously superheroes were a thing, and you could just make up your own superheroes, which were all kind of derivatives of every other known superhero. But you had Golden Heroes, which I never played. Heroes Unlimited, I played once, and I just preferred Marvel Superheroes better. It was just Heroes Unlimited. I thought was too complicated. It's a Palladium game. Actually, I have a friend who works for Kevin, the guy that runs that place. He works for them right now. Justice Incorporated, another hero game. Maelstrom, I don't remember. I might have seen this like in a Dragon magazine, but I don't think I've ever saw it in the real world. There we go. I've done a whole video on this, so if you want to see the whole video, go check this whole video out. But let's just briefly touch up on it. And I won't tell them all my stories because that's what that video is for. But Marvel Superheroes, there it is there. This was the basic set that came out in 84. Actually, all of and then they had the miniature sets. They had set 2, which was pretty much most of the X-Men. They were rough miniatures, but they were cool to me as a kid. I loved them. I wanted She-Hulk in the Fantastic Four costume because, like I said, I just started reading everything, and I just discovered Fantastic Four. Here's what the miniature boxes looked like. I loved miniatures back then, especially the D&D stuff or Star Frontiers. But these Marvel Superheroes, they're terrible miniatures, but I loved them. Wanted them so bad. I had pretty much at one point, not all at once, but I did eventually get all the sets. I think there was 3 sets. I had the X-Men set 2. I got Jinsky's Hobby Shop on Van Dyke. This one I think I just got at whoever had it at the time. Joe's. Yeah, I think Joe. Or maybe it could have been. Actually, a lot of the stuff I got from KB Toy Store too. And that was set 3, right? Yeah, set 3. Where's set 1? I don't show set 1. Set 1. Oh, there is. Well, there is set 1. There's the box of it. And again, I love the design of it. Loved it all. And again, I mean, you got Captain Monica Rambeau. I mean, she was right in there. It's Secret Wars. I mean, essentially. And so that was set one. Set one came with those 4 characters and a few others. I just don't see a picture of the actual miniatures. But so obviously, like I said, watch my video on that. Most of this stuff, well, these are all the advanced. These didn't come out till 86, but this is all 84. Most of this all came out in 84, including right there, Secret Wars, the module, which just for the hell of it, just for giggles and poop. Oh, that's right. I have 2. I forgot I had 2. There it is. I got 2 copies of it for some reason. I don't know how I got 2 copies of it. There's Secret Wars, the first module, which is 84, and I believe Secret Wars 2 came out when Secret Wars 2 came out in 85, if I'm not mistaken. 86. Okay, so it didn't come out until 86, right before the release. This was like, I think this was the last module of the basic set until they came out with the advanced set. But obviously, it's the 40-year anniversary of Secret Wars. Collecting the comics, the facsimile comics, right now as we speak. But there were the modules. One of them I got. I think what it is, I had one of them, which is my original one, and then my second one I bought off of eBay or something or wherever, thinking that I didn't have it or that I got rid of it, and I realized, I didn't get rid of it. I still have it. So that's how I think I ended up with 2 copies of this. But I love all the characters from Secret Wars. Anyways, I won't get into that as much. Like I said, go watch my video on Marvel superheroes for that. But regardless, that came out this year too. Like I said, just think about all the stuff that I had to. All of this stuff that was in my brain. A kid who couldn't read, and again, we had problems playing the game at the time too. But it wasn't super difficult. It was actually pretty easy to kind of figure it out. And me and my friends, and actually what really helped me out was a kid when I got to junior high in 7th grade. This is when the, actually it was 7th grade. It was winter semester of 7th grade. In 86 is when the advanced set came out, and he got it. And he's like, hey, you play this game? I said, yeah, sort of. And he's like, oh, come on over, we'll play it. And he was smart. His dad's a doctor. So he played it with me, and I was like, oh, so that's what I've been doing wrong all this time. So I was pretty close. For me and my, my younger friends, we kind of figured out most of it. And then, of course, obviously, when I moved to the trailer park and went to Ruther Junior High in 8th grade, 2nd semester, and met my friend, one of my lifelong friends from there, or at least friend from then. That's all we did. We played this to death. That rest of that school year, into that summer, into the freshman year in high school. Loved this game. Absolutely loved this game. Still do. Still wish I still want to play it all. Still want to go through all the modules with somebody again. Incidentally, they did have a DC version of it too, which again, the DC, they're using all of the Jose Garcia Lopez artwork. This is from Mayfair Games, not actually from TSR, and they used, and it was, they had the Brainiac. That was the Brainiac from the action figures. This is all 84, so, which is weird. This must have come out in 85 then. Yeah, I think it must have came out in 85, I'm assuming, because I should have listed it. We won't go into that. Let's just assume it came out in 85, which would make more sense. Oh, there it is. Sorry, there was the... Jeez, what the heck's going on here? That was the other miniature set. Here we go. So, yeah. $40 for that one. It looks like they're missing 2 figures, though. They're terrible. These are unpainted, too. Terrible, but I love them. Like I said, a lot of things that are great now, but I just have such a fondness for the inferior version, just because of the nostalgia attached to it. And like I said, it goes for a lot of things. Let's go back. Let's keep hitting that list. Let's try to get that list knocked down. We're at 44 minutes. So we're at Uh, I'll mention this really because really there's not much to mention in 94, or sorry, 94, 84. But I'm just going to mention this real quick. During the mech craziness, right? And I didn't even know what Gundam was yet. Mechton 1 came out. It was an anime mecha role-playing game. I didn't even know what anime was at the time. So I saw this, and I was like, what is that? I didn't know what it was. I saw the covers, and I was like, what is this? I don't know what this is. And it really wasn't Gundam. It was like a rip-off of Gundam. It wasn't until, I think this was 87 when this came out, when Mechton 2 came out. And again, now it really looks like, a cross between, now I said I went Robotech crazy by then. I got into Mechton 2. I loved Mechton 2. $59. Jeez, I bought it for like $6 back then. Or $8 or whatever. It was $7.95 or something. Anyways, yeah, I ended up getting that in, I want to say, freshman year in high school. So 87, 88. Yeah, so there's that. I just want to hit that real quick. So that one's coming later. But again, so the original Mechton did not play in '84, but I was aware of it. The Middle Earth role-playing game, MERP. It was always, that was one of those games like, it's obviously Lord of the Rings. It's Middle Earth. I would see the ads in the back of Dragon or in Dragon magazine. I would see the modules. I would see the box sets. I'd see the supplements. All that stuff I would see at Joe's Hobby Shop. Joe's always seemed like he carried a lot of it. And it just seemed so adult to me. Like, I don't know, it looks too, when I thought something looked adult as a kid, you would think you would do the thing like, well, I want to be an adult, right? But at the same time, I thought, it's just like the wargaming stuff. It looks boring. Looks like boring adult, not fun adult. And so, and I mean, I knew what Middle Earth was. I take it back. I had this this way before the movies. I knew what it was because the books, my sister, the book set's still sitting on the shelf. I saw the Ralph Bakshi movies, yada yada yada. I knew what it was, and I had like a fascination with Lord of the Rings and Middle Earth in '84 and throughout the '80s, but I never really did deep dive into it. It was just, it's like, oh, it's a book that I can't read. And I don't really want to, I don't know, it seems like a lot of reading, and it also seems a little boring, and it seems a little, even though that's what Dungeons & Dragons was all based off of, but Dungeons & Dragons seem to be more glorified and more, dumbed down for people like me. So, I never got into it. And still to this day, never got into it. Always seen it, never got into it. Panzer Command, looks like a war game ever. I remember the box Panzer Command that was at Joe's. Joe's had a shelf, like all their modules were like records or comic books on top in this bin. It was double-sided, and the box sets, like for the games and stuff, they were all on they were interspliced. They were down below. Actually, there was a shelf on the wall that had the box sets on a shelf. But all like the books and stuff, this is where I discovered Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Other Strangeness, which was not until the next year. It was on that shelf. But I remember going through there and there'd be all these like boxes and books and stuff on all these kind of boring games. And one of them was that Panzer Command. And it's like, it looks kind of cool. But I was sticking with the Axis and Allies at the time. Paranoia. Here we go. Let's touch this one. This game is another game that I wanted to play a lot. Actually, the version of Paranoia I had was the main one, the first one. Was the year it came out too. Because they did have another. That was the player's handbook for it. They did have another one. This one here, it was I think it was just a second edition, but I had the first edition. They had miniatures for this, little blister packs of miniatures. I loved it. For some reason, I just liked the look of like the characters that were always they always look kind of weird, and it was just like, what is this? I want to know what this is. And then when I tried to read the back of the box, I remember the guy at Joe's Hobby Shop saying, "Oh, it's like a comedy game." And I go, "What do you mean a comedy game? And what do you mean by that?" He said, "Well, it's funny. It's satirical. You're a clone, and you live in these big mega cities, and you've got a job to do, and you're like a worker I'm like, okay. And they're like, but you're a clone, so if you die, you've got more clones. You just pick up as another clone. But you don't want the mother brain, which is the main, like, it's like George Orwell, 1984. You don't want mother brain, or was it mother brain or mega brain? I can't remember what it's called. You don't want it to find out what you're doing, because everybody's paranoid. That's what the whole game was about. It's about paranoia. Everybody's paranoid because, like, they don't want to. They're paranoid that the main program is going to figure out what they're doing when they're up to shenanigans and no good. And most of the time, they were up to shenanigans and no good. You're trying to steal information. You're doing all these little adventures where you're breaking. You were a tech, but you could break into, like, the system and steal stuff, or you could show, like, broadcasts of, like, anti-government stuff, and that's the whole game was about. And I was like, that's vaguely interesting, but I don't get it, because I was 11. Like, I don't get it, but it sounds fun. So I ended up not getting it, but always looking at it, and then seeing the modules come, some of the miniatures, like, oh, I want to get into this game. I didn't find anybody to play this game until freshman in high school. One guy who was older than me, he was like, oh, I love that game, Paranoia. Yeah, you got it? I said, no, but I want to get it. And he's like, oh, I don't have a copy of it myself. He says, if you get it, we'll play it. So I ended up getting a copy of it. That version of it, which was the one I got, was the first version of it, because they did have a second, but I got the original. And I brought it, and then they said, oh yeah, let's meet up at the library. We met up at the library, and then we ended up also, I mean, it's funny, I've thought about the old library at my high school. That's weird. I forgot all about because they built a new one when they built the new mall. Wow, that old library was creepy. Anyways, we met up in the library and would play at lunchtime, and I'd play with him and like two other guys. They're all a little older than me, and we played Paranoia, and I thought it was just hilarious. It was just fun. I was hanging out with older kids. It seemed smart, and I like to hang around smart people because it made me feel smart. And I wasn't really that smart. So, and then that's the thing, is a lot of other dumb people thought I was smart because I hung out with smart people. Aren't you smart? No, I'm just as dumb as you are. Oh, why are you hanging with all smart kids? To feel smart. But yeah, that's Paranoia. Great game. I think it exists today. I think there's a version of it out right now that you can play. Because I've seen it at my local game store. I was like, oh wow, Paranoia. But yeah, it's out. So let's go back. Let's keep knocking down the list. We're almost done here. Ranger, don't know what that was. Ringworld, I learned about Ringworld like a couple of years later. My mom had a boyfriend of many. This guy was into science fiction. He was telling me about Larry Niven and Ringworld, and I just thought it sounded really cool. At the same time, also, which is another video I need to make, on Barlow's Guide to Extraterrestrials, which is a book I got through the Science Fiction Book Club. That I talk about Columbia House. Well, it's the same thing, and there's I'll get to that later. But anyways, yeah. So Barlow's Guide to the Universe, and they had all the the puppeteers in it and stuff like that. And I was like, oh, it's really cool. So then when I remember seeing the game though, so I was like, oh, that's what Larry Niven's Ringworld. I read Ringworld. Well, I had to read the Neutron Star, which was a short story book. I had to read it for my astronomy class, freshman in college. And I was like, oh, so I should get the rest of the Ringworld books. Got them at used bookstores, classic books down in Woodward. And actually, the teacher of this, he would give extra credit if you could find science fiction books that he doesn't have. And he gave me a list, and I went down to classic books, and I got a few of them. And I was like, how much extra credit do we get per book? And he says, I'll give you 5 extra credit points per book. Like, you needed 4 books to elevate your grade one step, right? And I was already getting like a A- in the class, and I go, there you go. There's the books you're looking for. He's like, oh, where'd you get these? I go, classic books. He's like, where's that at? And I go, on Woodward? You never been to classic books? And he'd never been to classic books. The guy actually owns it. I think he's still there today. He looks like Isaac Asimov, but anyways, he what do you call it? Yeah, so I had to read that, and then I ended up reading Ringworld and learned about all that stuff. Um, so I remember seeing that cover. I remember seeing the girl here, when the little dinosaur and her little legs there. I always looked at that, but I didn't know what the rest of the game was. Never played it. Um, Supremacy, that was another one. I played this one in college with those gamers. They would play this a lot at Order the NovaCon with Order of Leibowitz. I'd always see people playing Supremacy. So what is that? Oh, it's Supremacy. Oh, I gotta play that sometime. Never played it until I went to college. Um, and then here we go. Here's a game. I'm not gonna pull it up because I didn't pull it up, but Toon. I was always wondering. I said, "Do you remember this game?" I was talking to my buddies. I said, "Do you remember this game? It was a role-playing game back in the '80s." Uh, I remember. I want to say that it was like cartoon characters and then like Rabbit Rampage, which is another game. And I go, is that the game with the rabbits with the chainsaws? And they're like, yeah. I go, no, it was just called Toon, I think. It was just a cartoon role-playing game. And they go, no, I just remember Rabbit Rampage. Well, there it is. There's Toon. I would see this. I never bought it because obviously it didn't. I remembered it, but it didn't play it. It was another game. It was just kind of generic, anthropomorphic cartoon characters, and you could play them as characters. Always had it. Joe's had an interest into it. Actually, in the '90s, I had a job briefly, an art job. I got right out of high school, working for the guy who did Toon, but he was doing another game, and he hired me to do the artwork for it. But I did like the cover and like some inside illustration, and then he kind of just flaked out. I got paid, but I got flaked out, and I didn't get any more work from him. But yeah, Top Spies. I don't remember this. Top Secret Spies. I don't remember that. Okay, last game. I'm not going to get into it either. I'm not going to pull it up. But Twilight 2000. Now, some of those guys that I played Paranoia with, they also played BattleTech. Which, again... Oh, did we cover BattleTech? I don't think we covered... Oh, I think we missed BattleTech. I've got a BattleTech video coming. And it's coming up. I actually recorded it. I'm going to drop it here pretty soon. It's got more on BattleTech. But I'm just going to show you BattleTech real quick. BattleTech was a... It still exists today. It's a different company. But it's a... oh, come on. Stop going to eBay. It's a tabletop war game with robots. So anyways, they played BattleTech, but they also played a game called Twilight 2000, and I've seen Twilight 2000 a lot. It's like Traveler, some of those weird games. Sorry, got the wrong screen up here. And I was like, okay, I said, I kind of want to play Twilight 2000. It just sounds cool. It's like, oh, it's post-apocalyptic, or like, like World War III type of stuff. Let's see, what is it? Yeah, 1904, post-apocalyptic military tabletop role-playing game. Published by Game Designers Workshop, GDW, if you know who they are, by the way. Set in the aftermath of World War III, the game operates on the premise that the United States, NATO, and Soviet Union Warsaw Pact have fought a lengthy, I'm assuming, battle or war. But anyways, it sounded interesting. Very 80s. Very, I mean, we're talking about Soviet Union Warsaw Pact and the States and NATO. I mean, that's very 80s. It's Cold War. Then I played it with those guys. It is the most boring-ass game. And maybe it's just the people I played with it. Maybe people have had better experiences with this game, with their game groups. But I thought it was cool. I had all the trappings of stuff that I liked from the 80s, and it was the 80s, but it was so boring, and nothing happened, and I remember trying to get to this truck that was, like, being shot at, and I ended up finally blowing up the truck on accident and killed my character, and that was after, like, 3 hours of literally doing nothing. Again, it's probably the people you play with. Cyberpunk comes to mind of actually a good friend of mine too. Cyberpunk comes to mind of playing that at Oakland University before I went to college there, right out of high school, or still in high school at the time. No, I was just out of high school. And no, I think I was still in high school. Anyways, I thought it was a cool game, but playing with a certain group of people is just, there's certain gaming groups you get with where they talk a lot, they don't pay attention, they get sidetracked easily, and a lot of people, like the dungeon master or whatever he is, game master, the judge, whatever, they're not following any particular like preset adventure. They're kind of coming up with something on their own, and they're literally, it seems like they're making it up as they go along, and you get to the point where it's like they just kind of shut down and don't know what to do, and they give you like a task to do that they didn't think out right, and they realize that the task is way too hard for your character levels, and then everybody dies, and then they all get mad at the dungeon master, and it's just like, yeah, it's poor game mastering. I said I'm not gonna. I have a friend who did that with Cyberpunk. I'm not going to criticize him, but I mean, that experience I had when I played it with him is why I turned off to Cyberpunk. Same thing with Twilight 2000. I played it with those other guys and it was poured out of my skull. Last but not least, because we had just hit an hour. Hey, we good timing. Wizard. This is a card game. I had to see pictures of it. I vaguely have. Actually, I don't even. This might not even be what I'm thinking of. So we'll skip it. So anyways, again, a lot of good stuff came out. For me, specifically. I say probably the highlights of 1984 for me is Axis and Allies, Battletech, Marvel Superheroes. That's probably the three big takeaways from this year. Stuff like Paranoia, stuff like, what's some of the other ones on there? Broadsides and Boarding Parties. I mean, loved them, but, I didn't get to play them in their entirety or for real, and I didn't get to play them that much. But Marvel Superheroes, Battletech, and Axis and Allies I played a lot of, with a lot of different friends, a lot of different people over the years. So out of this list, those are my big takeaways. Number one, obviously, I still have this stuff now, is Marvel Superheroes. I mean, that's my game, and I'd like to be playing it again sometime soon. Alright, so we got to the end of the list. Let me know what your experiences with these games, if you remember them, if you played them. What are your nightmare scenarios? What games did you have that, like, you wanted to throw your game master through the wall, or games that you loved, or games that, you have such a fondness for because of a specific memory. Tell me all that stuff. I love hearing it. I mean, I'd love to tell you my stuff, and I'd love to hear your stuff in kind. So, hit me up with that stuff. Remember, like and subscribe if you like this stuff. I'm going to drop that. There's a video I got on it's not specifically on Battletech, but it covered Battletech in detail in it. And it's got, there was a confusion with the robots at literally this year and by next year, by 85 definitely. There was a confusion with the robots. Like, what's going on? Why are there some of the same robots and all the same things? And of course, I get into that in the video. So if you know anything about it, you probably know all about that anyways. But tune in and check that one out. I'll probably post that one after this, since I'm talking about it in this video. This will probably be the next video I post on Friday. And then maybe over the weekend I'll post the other one on the robot confusion one. Alright. I'll let you guys go. Had to record late this year. I was, working like a dog today. I pulled in a pretty solid, heavy day that I haven't pulled in that much in a long time. I actually take it back. Over the weekend, I pulled in 2 days like that, where I was working like literally from 8 o'clock in the morning to 8 o'clock at night. It wasn't as bad tonight, I guess, but whew, takes a lot out of you. So I didn't get around to recording this one until later. So, anyways, I'll catch you on the next one, and take care. Bye-bye.